I agree. Like Joe Biden.
All right. Well, I'm grateful for you both to be there. And on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us on Balance. I will toss it to my friend, Chris Cuomo.
Hey, I'm Chris Cuomo. Happy Friday. You got an upgrade last night with Geraldo, the one and only, and of course he won the night. We'll be back later in the show. He's going to be discussing with me the controversy surrounding the OJ trial and whether he agrees with me that we are about to relive a similar drama starting Monday. So let me set the table, a little food for thought. Here's how I see it. I think OJ did it. I think the civil case got it right. And I think the criminal case may have gotten it right, too. Wait, what? Yeah, I said it. Why? Because police may have set up a guilty man in the criminal case. And that's why the lesson of the OJ trial was as much about what it meant to perceptions of the system as it was about what happened and proof of the same. The evidence supported the prosecution's criminal case. Prosecution checked the boxes of showing OJ, beyond reasonable doubt, had the opportunity, means, and motive to commit the murders of his wife and her friend. But had the police manipulated that evidence to ensure OJ went down? That was the vexing question. Did police set up a guilty man? It was that perception that created the perverse desire to see a killer who was one of the biggest black celebrities go free. And that ethos overpowered the facts and the sympathy for the victims and their families and the righteousness of justice, which should just be fairness under law. But if the jury saw proof of that police perfidy, were they wrong to acquit? Or was the acquittal a stand against a system that was abused, if not designed, to work against OJ and by extension, black people in America? I read a piece today that posited that the OJ case was our introduction to alternative facts. Two parts of society seeing the same thing in completely different ways. I disagree. I don't think it was ever about refusing to see what had likely happened. It was about whether the system was being abused to target who the police wanted to go down. Now, here's why I point this out. We are now exactly almost 30 years after the OJ event, and we are witnessing a similar dynamic with Trump. It's not about race or impressions of one race about how they're being mistreated by the system. But the dynamic with this payoff case that looks like it's going to start Monday has a very familiar feel. Now, we start with the irony of ironies that Trump, who had no problem seeing past the concerns of minorities with policing and unjust prosecutions, now shouts that we have a two-tier justice system. Of course, he's saying it when it targets him, right? As absurd as that is on one level, it's significant because that is the OJ dynamic and it is in play. Trump supporters, backed by a party that's half of this poisonous political system, are determined to convince themselves and independent voters like you that the system is out to get them. Who? Biden. Democrats, the elite, the establishment, every boogeyman. They're all coming together, prosecuting their main political opponent, manipulating and abusing the system to make countless cases. This time, the man as metaphor does not have blood on his hands. And this is certainly not about murder, but I'll get back to that in a second. Once again, the defendant likely did what he is accused of. And once again, people who identify with him believe the system is out to get him, and by extension, them. Now, if this were the case in Georgia or in D.C. or even the documents case, the cries that this is a kangaroo court would likely ring hollow for most of you. But these cases in New York, specifically the one with the payoff, led by a district attorney named Bragg, who has seemed to be bragging about getting Trump from jump, and his state attorney general that literally campaigned on it, they're ripe for outrage. Did he do it? Yeah, I know he did. I broke the story of his rat lawyer, Cohen, recording his conversation with Trump, explaining the payoff. Trump knew. He did it. But was the case clean of agendas outside justice? Was it about politics? Are these acts worthy of legal action, complicating a presidential election, compromising the man leading in many polls? Those are vexing questions, too. But let me end on a different one for you. You who are amped up, perhaps, by this assertion of a malicious prosecution against Trump. You want the justice system to be free of bias, right? Be about the facts and the law. What if it were a murder case against Trump? What if the former president decided to test his own theory that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and his belief that you would still vote for him? Would you see that case the same way against Trump? The obvious answer should be no, it's murder. But it was pretty obvious with OJ, too, and we saw how that went. Now, this time, the flashpoint won't be a verdict. It's going to be a vote, and it starts on Monday. Let's discuss what is to come, what happened today with Mr. Trump supporting the insecure Speaker of the House, the two of them announcing that our election has a problem, and they know how to fix it, voter ID. Let's discuss that and more with Trump's 2016 deputy campaign manager, David Bossie, also the co-chair of the 2024 Republican National Convention Committee on Arrangements. Dave Bossie, thank you for joining me, especially on a Friday.
Oh, my pleasure to be here, Chris, as usual.
What's your take on the payoff case?
Well, first of all, it's pretty outrageous. You just did the comparison to murder. I don't understand. I was trying to figure out where you were going.
No, I'm not.
Trump was a murderer, but
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Dave, let me help you out, brother. I'm saying it's not like OJ because that was a murder case. I ended on the question.
But I'm trying to figure out why you did that.
Here's
That's
why.
what I'm trying to get at here.
You should be doing it. And I'll tell you why. Because the whole theory of the case is it's not about whether or not he did it. The system was set up to frame Trump and to get him out of political contention. And that's what this payoff case with Bragg is about. That was the argument in OJ. That, he did it, but you're going after him because you want the black man to go down, even though he's a celebrity, and this happens all the time. That's my argument.
That argument, I understand what you're saying. And Bragg and Letitia James and these malicious prosecutors in Georgia, this crazed Jack Smith, these people they're destroying the very fabric of our democracy, what they're doing. In claiming that Trump is, in fact, a threat to our democracy, they are, in fact, destroying the very fabric that holds this country together, that justice is blind, and that what they have done here and what Bragg is doing, when he could have done this years ago, and the President Trump, would have been exonerated then, or found guilty by look, we all know what's going on in New York, okay? We all see it with our own eyes. The American people are rejecting it resoundingly. Why do I say that? Because his polling numbers continue to go up. They continue to attack him unfairly. They unmercifully spend his money on lawyers across the country. But yet the American people are rejecting it, and they are going towards Trump. Why? Because Joe Biden has no business being in the White House. So we'll cover all of this, but this is an outrage what they are doing. Monday is a circus. It is an embarrassment to the United States.
I mean, the problem is he did it. So I see by the letter of the law why they'd be making the case. But the question is it about the letter of the law? I have been on record from the beginning. I don't like the New York cases.
You're right.
I think that they help Trump more than they hurt them.
But and if you just, like the American people do, look at the timeline. This case
I get it.
Was rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected. And only because right now, this is election interference in an election year. That is all it is. And the American people are figuring it out. And they got it. And that's why these independents, these soft Democrats, these moderate Democrats and independents are gravitating towards Donald Trump for two reasons. One, they're seeing what this legal system, what Joe Biden's Justice Department is doing to Donald Trump on one hand. And it's so outrageous. And on the other hand, they're seeing what Joe Biden has turned this country into in 3.5 years, and they're saying to themselves, we need Donald Trump back in the White House over his policies.
Yeah, look, I wish it were all about the policies. And obviously that would benefit you guys also because, I think you got a very flawed candidate. But if it were just about the policies, you may get independence. Maybe even, I don't know about Democrats, but, you would get independence because if it's just about policies, but it's not, it's about people. And concerns about Biden are almost exclusively personal, even among the left, and as are the concerns about Trump. But I don't disagree with you that these New York cases are a bad look at the minimum. And I think they're going to be a distraction and they're going to be a net negative for the kind of collective cause and probably help Trump. Now, let's talk about what else happens going forward.
With that. I agree that this is going to help Trump. I do agree with you.
So we'll see. The polls, we'll see. You say he should debate Biden. Biden should debate him. Don't duck him. Okay. As we both know, incumbents are never crazy about debating, right? They don't want to give any attention to their opponent. Second, shouldn't Robert F. Kennedy Jr. be part of that debate?
Great question. First of all, anytime, anywhere. Joe Biden can just show up. There'll be 2 podiums and 2 microphones. Donald Trump wants as many debates as Joe Biden will want to do. And if the organization, whether it's the Commission on Presidential Debates or any other organization that wants to host a debate, they can invite whoever they claim meets the minimum requirements. I personally think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. does belong on the stage if he meets the polling numbers at the time of those debates.
Let me ask you something. I can't have enough debate. You know what I mean? I would love it. But, Trump does some good hiding also. He hasn't come on NewsNation yet. Nobody calls balls and strikes more straight than the people on this network. It doesn't have to be with me. He and I definitely have our own personal issues, but those are of his making, and they could be at his correction. But you got Vargas here, you got a lot of people here that he could do an interview with, and he hasn't. So isn't he ducking the same way Biden is?
Not at all. You're making it personal about one network, and I would urge the president to do NewsNation, obviously, but I would just say to you that Joe Biden can't stand on the stage for 90 minutes. I don't think he could handle it. I don't believe that they will allow. It's really a malpractice for his campaign folks to allow him to. He's going to be a coward at the end of the day because his people will never put him in a position to have to be on a stage with Donald Trump, who will just mangle him.
So you think there will be no debate?
Let me just say this about. No, I hope there's many debates. I would like to see a debate a month starting in May. I personally think there should be as many as humanly possible. Let me just say something about.
I think there'll be one, maybe
the Commission on Presidential Debates. Well, that'll be a disaster. And let me tell you, if that's because of Joe Biden and his rejection of debates, it will be another threat by the Biden administration to our very democracy. It is part of our our democratic principles that the American people get to see our candidates for president on a general election stage. And it will be devastating, in my opinion, to Joe Biden if the American people don't get that. And Donald Trump wants debates. He wants a lot of debates. But the commission also they're a dinosaur. Okay, we don't have election day. They're pretending like it's election day. We now have election months. The first ballots, Chris, you know when they drop? September 6th. That's when people start getting ballots in the mail. September 6th. We have to have debates before that. We have to have debates in August, September, and October.
Debates. I'm with you about debates. I think the system sucks. I think it's designed to advantage the parties and not the people. I think it's a closed process. The parties have no business. They're not mentioned in the Constitution. They're not a creature of our federal law. They're just tradition. And we can't change it because everybody in power is in the parties. That's why I'm asking the people to leave them. There should be a lot more robust debate.
That's right.
Everybody hides. Dave, it's Friday night. I'm going to let you go. I'll give you the last word.
No, Thank you. Anyone listening that wants to host a debate, any network, any organization, they should put out invitations to both President Trump and President Biden and see who will take them up on it.
We're in. We'll do it any way they want to do it. They can do it individually. They can do it together. I don't care what it is. I think that
NewsNation did an amazing job.
David Bossie, thank you very much for saying that. Thank you for being part of it. It was a proud moment for us because there's not a silent majority in America. There's one that's being silenced. And that's what NewsNation is all about, is trying to give those people back their voice. So thank you for letting them be a part of that. Appreciate you. We'll continue the conversation. Take a break right now. Have a great Friday night and a great weekend. 4 minutes, 5 seconds. OJ Simpson died owing a lot of money, reportedly, to the Goldman family, like $100 million. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen with his estate? And did he make any deathbed confessions? We have his longtime attorney very close to him at the end. Next. All know what happened in the OJ criminal trial, but remember, he was found liable for their deaths in a civil trial. And part of that was that he was ordered to pay the victims' families $33 million, which is now reportedly much higher because of interest. All right. So the question is, did he have money in his estate when he died that he hadn't, that he had not paid them? And will the families get any of that? Joining us now, OJ Simpson's longtime lawyer, Malcolm Laverne. And we have also with us Geraldo Rivera. Malcolm, thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Geraldo, thank you for carrying this show like a Sherpa last night to the top of NewsNation's ratings. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Malcolm, first, let me get it out of the way. Did OJ want you to tell the world anything about the truth of what happened to his wife and her friend?
Mr. Simpson never referred to those types of issues in any type of way. The last thing me and him discussed was him wanting some water while he was thirsty. And thank you very much for asking how the family members are doing. He had 4 children who just lost their father, so they'll be happy that you asked that.
Listen, Malcolm, it's a complicated situation, but for their loss, I understand. They are not the family members
they'll be
who are on
happy.
people. Listen, you brought him up, not me. I'm saying that the family members that people are most sensitive about are obviously the ones who are victimized by OJ. So is there money in the estate? How are you going to handle that?
Well, first of all, I have been informed over the last day or two that I am going to be the executor of the estate. So my attorney hat is now off and the executor hat is now on. Probate and estate is highly specialized. I'd urge you to consult with the Nevada probate lawyer to get the full scope of that. As far as my duties now, it will be to do an accounting. And as you mentioned, there are multiple creditors out there. I would characterize the one you're talking about as celebrity judgments. Those are unsecured judgments, but the real issues will be Mr. Simpson did have IRS debts, there'll be funeral expenses, there'll be all those things, and they take superiority over any other type of debt like the celebrity debts that you talked about.
Geraldo, what's your take on or now executor, calling them celebrity debts, and any question for him?
It made me gag. First of all, it is so disrespectful. I remind learned counsel that Ron Goldman was 25 years old when the estate he now represents, 25 years old, when OJ cut his head off almost as he killed his ex-wife and the mother of his
Geraldo,
2 children.
The facts are the
facts. It is appalling.
It is
appalling to me, the disrespect.
Debt is debt. It's debt. So, I mean, you can sensationalize
celebrity debt. You put the
want.
you, counsel, put the heavy celebrity debt on it as if it was not a righteous obligation of the estate you now represent.
I think there's a little too much emotion going on. Let's get on to the next questions.
No, I'm good with you,
Malcolm.
Malcolm.
Remember,
you do your job.
I represented Mr. Simpson for 15 years, so you remember I lost someone that I dealt with a long time too. So it's let's get on to the next questions, gentlemen.
Malcolm, you've said enough. I wish you good luck with your work going forward. I hope that you do what's right for the people who deserve it most, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate accommodating you.
All right. Take care. Appreciate the accommodation. Geraldo, that wasn't going anywhere good, so forget him. The idea that we're going to see something similar in terms of whether or not a case is not about the facts, but it's about the perception of why it was brought in the first place with Trump and the payoff. I'm giving you a chance to cool down by changing subjects.
Thank you. I believe, Chris, first of all, it's very provocative. You agree with Tavis Smiley that, in your opinion, facts and circumstances as you know them, that the LAPD may have framed a guilty person. In other words, they embellished. They put extra dressing on the cake. I feel strongly that OJ Simpson was a murderer. But
yeah, me too.
He beat the case. He beat the case because of the emotion of I believe, the jury pool, the race and emotion. I think that the same kind of dynamics may be. Yeah, it's not about, I heard David Boise, saying, wait, it's not, you're putting OJ and Donald Trump in the same sentence. It's not about that. It's about jury nullification. Mm-hmm. Trump may be innocent, but the jury, loathing him, could find him guilty anyway. It's kind of the reverse play. I think where you have some jurisdictions where the jury might be a runaway jury and convict someone who's innocent on the facts. In Manhattan, Donald Trump is enormously unpopular. It is, in my view, entirely possible that Donald Trump could be convicted. I believe he is overcharged. I think there's one count, not 34 counts. I believe it's a misdemeanor, not a felony. Still, you had a reputable district attorney and probably the premier county prosecutor's office in our country overcharging someone of a different political party in a way that was dogged, in a way that was, absolutely unswervable. Now it's up to the judge and how the judge conducts the case. But the jury, when they go into that jury room to deliberate, they're saying, well, what about the evidence? They're thinking, I hate this guy, this rich guy, this fat guy, this white guy, he's arrogant, this, that, and the other thing. I believe it's entirely possible that Trump could face a real dilemma before that jury in the New York County case. If it was a different place in the country, anywhere else almost, maybe Washington, D.C. would be the same as Manhattan. But it is, I think, a real peril. I'm against this case. The feds didn't file it. It never should have been filed. It should have been 1/34 of what it is, and it should have been a misdemeanor, not a felony. But once it gets into their hands, the jury's hands, anything is possible, Chris.
Well, look, I mean, they don't get to pick the charges. Right? I mean, they get to pick among the charges. They don't get to pick what the universe of charges is. That's done at the prosecutor's discretion. I think that you have probabilities going both ways. I trust the people of New York to do the right thing and overlook whatever they feel about Trump. I think it's just as likely that someone on that trial, on that jury, may do what you saw in the OJ case, which is this was brought the wrong way and for the wrong reasons, and I'm not going to reward that as justice. I'm not convicting him. I think it could go either way.
I think you're right. But if it goes, whichever way it goes, I believe, and I have to say it again, when you write 34 checks to achieve a certain goal, that is quieting a case, hush money to quiet a case, 34 checks, that's not 34 crimes. That's not 34 counts. It should not be. It's one crime. Agreed. It's one crime.
I don't even think it was an election violation.
Overt acts.
Right, but the reason they're getting them, it's not paying them. It's that it wasn't booked the right way for campaign purposes. And to me, that's like one of the most absurd legal arguments, let alone policy arguments. The only reason it went that way is because Cohen, to my understanding, was acting like a pig and trying to find out ways to get reimbursed as easily as possible. And they wound up construing it as a campaign contribution. You know, it was nonsense. And you can't believe Cohen. He keeps changing his story, you know, whatever suits him. I want to end on this idea. You know, you and I will live it together. We'll see the process, and I know you'll make sense of it for the audience, and I respect that of you in advance. Why don't you reach out to Trump and say, let's do an hour on NewsNation? We're friends.
You know, Trump and I go way back. You're so much younger than we are. You missed the whole 70s in New York. It was, Trump and I came up together. He came in from Queens. He did the Grand Hyatt Hotel on 42nd Street. I was Eyewitness News, local news. I just became a national personality, a national newsman. We came to New York the same middle, and our careers kind of arced. Of course, he was richer and more famous and became bigger ultimately than almost anybody around. Then we parted ways on January 6th. Actually, it started shortly after the election in December 2020. Up until December of 2020, he called my house every Friday, every other Friday. He'd call, how you doing? What are you doing? How are you feeling? He gave me 30 interviews. Now I feel awkward because I do not support him. But if you give me the assignment, I would be, of course, honored to ask on our behalf. And then that also gives my Erica will respond in a certain way. My wife Erica will be horrified, but I will call the White House. That's maybe a Freudian slip. I will call the campaign, the Trump campaign, and I will call the Trump campaign and say, on behalf of Chris Cuomo and NewsNation.
No, don't say that. Say the NewsNation part. Don't use my name.
Okay.
I want this to happen, brother.
There's laughter in the background here, but I will definitely put it to the. And Boise started saying, we did an excellent job, you leading, on the Republican debate down in Alabama. We showed that we can be impartial and
absolutely
high ratings, historic ratings, and so forth. I will ask on behalf of NewsNation if I am assigned, I will ask on behalf of the NewsNation.
I'm acting with the agency,
either by me or
I'm acting with the agency of Mike Korn, our boss, the president, and his boss, Sean Compton, who I'm texting with right now. He is happy to let you have an hour of my show to interview former President Trump. And we'll even change the name of it for you that night. Whatever you want, if you can get it done. Because the American people need to see the people who want to lead them tested. And you'll do the job.
But he has to know that I will ask all the hard questions, at least those I can think of.
He says he loves them. He says he loves the questions. All right, I got to go. Have a happy Friday night. Thank you very much for elevating the show last night. I appreciate you.
Go on. Thank you. You could have easily, when the news broke, came and said, I'm not talking to the advertisers anymore. This is too big. I'm going to sit in the chair. You say I got the highest rating. Anybody in that seat would have gotten the rating. And that's because all we know is that you did.
All we know is that you did. I don't know anything else that you just said. Everything else you just said is a maybe. All I know is you were in the chair. You got the number. And I'll tell you what, we were each where we needed to be last night. Because nobody's better covering that. And you know how I feel about you. I'll take you as an upgrade over me 10 times out of 10. And I needed to be in that room. I need those people to believe in what we're doing at NewsNation. I need them. We all got to be in the boat rowing in the same direction. You need the ad people. Otherwise, you'll never get to where you want to be. Geraldo, I love you. I'll see you next week. I'll see you on Monday.
Same here, brother. Okay, thank you.
All right, take care. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. I do love him. I love his ass. Every time I see him, I love that he's here. I can't tell you. Okay, the missing moms. Now it's starting to make a little bit more sense. There's some context of what the authorities believe this was about and who's involved here. I'll give it to you. Billy and Kelly traveling together for an arranged custody visit, right, of Butler's kids. The women never arrived. Their car was found abandoned in Oklahoma. State investigators say they have evidence to indicate foul play in the car. But since then, we haven't learned much. However, now we're advancing our understanding. More about the father of Butler's children, the one she was in the custody dispute with, who was said to be in rehab, and disturbing new allegations behind the custody of their kids. Let's bring in NewsNation correspondent Nancy Liu on the ground, trying to get answers, of course, and former FBI agent and NewsNation law and justice correspondent Jennifer Coffindaffer. Coffindaffer, you and I will hear how Nancy can feed what we understand about this. Nancy, thank you for joining us. Who have you been talking to, and what do we now know that we didn't know?
Well, Chris, law enforcement still not talking, but this is new. Sources are telling NewsNation producer Allison Weiner that the evidence includes blood inside and outside of the women's car, and according to her information, the women were shot. What happened to them remains a mystery. I did get through to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigations today. They would not say much, but they did indicate that this investigation is progressing, and they did reveal that other locations are being searched. They would not say where, they would not say why. But as you alluded to, the custody case may be at the heart of this investigation, and this includes an 8-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter, Chris.
Nancy, let me ask you one more thing. The idea, now I know that this isn't necessarily relevant legally, but in terms of reporting and understanding the humanity of the situation, what do we know about the father and his family in terms of by reputation?
Well, this is, like many custody cases, a very ugly custody case. There are a lot of accusations back and forth. Now, Veronica Butler, she lost custody of the kids back in 2022 because she had been moving around. She wasn't able to hold a job. So Wrangler Cole Rickman got custody of the kids, and then he ran into legal trouble. So his mother has been caring for the 2 kids. We understand that due to the custody court documents indicate that the mother has alleged abuse when the kids were with Veronica. Early on, Veronica had claimed the kids were abused when they were with Wrangler. So it's been a back and forth, a lot of accusations, and a very messy custody case.
Nancy, I appreciate it, and good on you for mentioning your producer, Allison Weiner, who's one of the best reporters in the business. I've known her a long time, but much respect to you for giving her that name check. Good for you. So, Jennifer Coffindaffer, what do you make of the advance of understanding blood inside, blood outside, and that may have been gunshot related?
Oh, it's critical. It's what we believe to have happened because there weren't clues in and around the scene in terms of them being in that vehicle anymore. And once we knew there were signs of foul play, we figured it must be blood. But the big key to me is this information about being shot. And that makes so much sense when we're talking about bringing the FBI in. Because when you bring the FBI in, you bring in the ballistics, you bring in the lab capabilities, you bring in all the people that can help in terms of fingerprint analysis and DNA analysis that is going to be critical in a case like this.
Jennifer's providing context to you guys about the news that the FBI has joined the case. Some were speculating that that's a vote of no confidence. It's actually much more likely what Jennifer is saying, which is once the local investigators need the kind of expertise that the feds do better, that is when the invitation comes. That's when they often accept it. Jennifer, how relevant to investigators is the reputation and the context of the families involved in the custody battle?
Well, anytime you can establish motive, obviously that helps you move in the direction of where you should be looking. And in this case, this is screaming off the pages of a custody situation. This was well known. They were going to exchange at this place. It seems very planned. They were likely made to go off this road. We know it was 1,000 feet off the road, Chris. So now that we see that possibly there was a gun involved, at least according to source information, that shows how they could have been manipulated to go down this road and to be taken.
Now, the other reason is you have the monster in the midst, right? That's one possibility. But if this is someone who knew them, you then have to ask yourself, what kind of person kills two people, not just the mother, but someone completely unrelated to the situation, just for custody? That's a very dark assertion. All right, I got to jump. Jennifer Coffindaffer, thank you very much. Nancy Liu, nice to have you on the show. Thank you for upping the game for us. And thanks, Allison, also. Take care. All right, let's take a break. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. That's how we do it here at News Nation. Family, baby. You do the job, you get the credit. How have you heard of the Ozempic? Of course you have, okay? Have you heard everybody now saying, hey, man, you can do this. This is good. It's never going to hurt you. A doctor I respect so much, Dr. Hyman, is here. And he's like, I'm very worried, and I'll tell you why. Next. We have two problems to look at tonight with Dr. Mark Hyman, who is a friend and just a phenomenal resource. Have you picked up on this anti-diet trend? You know, I'm always a diet guy. Diet means daily, right? It's all about habits, lifestyle. But now these so-called dietitians are saying, you know what, you can eat whatever you want. Everything has been a lie. Everything's not true. It's all fake news. Take a look.
Want to know what a dietitian looks for in a good cookie? Ooh. Mini eggs? Yes, please.
Going through 3 boxes in a week is okay. I know that it feels really scary, right? Because we've been told that if you eat that amount of food, then you're going to gain weight.
Enjoy it, friends. Guilt isn't an ingredient, so don't go adding it.
Ridiculous. Meanwhile, 3 million people die every year from obesity. Now, some of it is physiological, right? Like there's a gland issue, but a lot of it is habits and constant access to crap food, and us as a culture not doing enough to get ourselves away from this so that the market's not so saturated with it. My next guest says these influencers are being paid by companies to promote crap food. He also says you got to be careful about quick fixes like Ozempic, because there could be unforeseen long-term risk, all right? Dr. Mark Hyman, Chief Medical Officer, Function Health. Love him. It's good to see you, Doc. So, look, I mean, you and I know each other, and we are both of the same school that you got to do it every day, and you got to do it right, and you can't out-train the kitchen. But now it's like everybody's just gone full fake news. Eat whatever you want. It's all a lie. You'll be fine. What is going on and what is going wrong?
Well, Chris, we are in a national emergency around our health in this country. 75% of us are overweight. 42% are obese. We're in a metabolic health crisis. It's caused by the food we're eating. And there's an enormous effort by the food industry to confuse and confound the public. And they've created this movement, this anti-diet movement, where they're paying influencers who are not transparent to promote eating all kinds of junk online, saying it's fine to do without any inhibition. And they're saying we shouldn't shame anybody. There's no bad foods. It's bad to tell people to not eat junk because it shames them. Well, shame on the food companies for what they're doing. They fund 12 times as much, quote, research as the government on food. For example, the American Beverage Association funds studies that shows artificial sweeteners are okay. Should we believe them? We see them funding professional associations like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics gets 40% of their funding from the big food companies like Pepsi, Coke, General Mills. General Mills is now paying these influencers to say cereal should be, your main staple in your diet, and it shouldn't be something that's bad for you. They also are lobbying the government to oppose any regulations that inhibit any access to their food or any knowledge about their food. God forbid we should label foods with the actual label of what's in them. In Europe and in South America, there are clear warning labels on the front of packages saying, this is bad for you, just like cigarettes. In America, they're preventing that. So they're spending millions and millions of dollars trying to prevent us from doing the right thing. And I think it's shame on them.
We're eating ourselves to death in this place. It's so sad. It's so unnecessary, and it's all about the things that people say they're against, all these big businesses getting over on us and doing things that are only good for them and bad for us. It's nowhere is it more true than with food. So then you have this second prong, which is, and by the way, you take this shot, and then you're not even going to be hungry. and your appetite's going to go away, and you're gonna process stuff differently, and you're going to drop so much weight you're not going to know what to do with your clothes. You have concerns. Why?
Well, I do. I mean, I think, Chris, first we have to deal with the toxic food carnival we live in, and that's called America, and deal with the food industry that's pushing these foods on us. It's making us gain weight. And in fact, those companies are worried about Ozempic. They're calling the CEO of Novo Nordisk, who makes Ozempic, saying, we're worried about our market share, or maybe we should say stomach share. But these drugs, they, like any drug, they have good and bad effects. But to scale them up for everybody in the country, it just doesn't make sense, because there are concerns about their side effects. Muscle loss, a big one. You lose muscle, you lose your metabolism, you end up actually having a slower metabolism at the end of the day. You gain back most of the weight if you stop it. It can become a lifelong drug. There's evidence that it increases bowel obstruction, pancreatitis, thyroid issues, cancer issues. So we're concerned about these drugs in a way that we haven't had them on the market long enough to really see the concerns that I think we're going to see. So we have to be cautious. That's not to say they can't be helpful for some people. That's not to say we shouldn't be prescribing them in doses that may be lower, and cycling them and not having people on them all the time, not giving them fully with just willy-nilly without any other lifestyle support. You need an aggressive lifestyle change program. You need strength training. You need protein. You need to make sure you reduce your intake of all the crap and eat good foods. And it can be an adjunct. But to think it's a panacea, I think is wrong, and it misses the point, which is we need to deal with our screwed up food system, and we need to fix our food system, which is what we're trying to do in Washington. It's what we need to do. And what some of these articles are calling out, these dietitians and others who are acting so unethically and confusing and confounding the American public, much to their detriment.
Yeah, I mean, look, these influencers are FOS, and people know that. There's a little bit of willful ignorance. Yeah. There's a little bit of willful ignorance here. You know what I mean? Like, you want it to be true, but you know that this is probably a stupid suggestion. But hey, they're telling me it, so now at least I have an excuse to do it. Dr. Mark Hyman, I appreciate you very much, and I am with you in the fight against the people who are putting out bad food and trying to convince us that it's no problem. I'm with you in that fight, brother.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris, because the FTC also is with us. The Federal Trade Commission has come down on these nutritionists and these professional associations, saying they're unethical, they need to stop, and they're going to be fined, and they're even going to be having their license taken away because of what they're doing. And it's 40% of the nutritionists online who are influencers are doing this stuff. So it's really pervasive. It's not just a couple here and there.
Gotcha. Dr. Hyman, to be continued. Take care, brother. 4 minutes, 45 seconds. Quick final thought. Happy Friday.